Okie dokie. So I'm back and we're going to run through some more trig identities for part 2 6-1. And let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So whenever I see something like this, a something squared and a 1 involved, I'm screaming in my head a Pythagorean identity. And sure enough, it is one. If you go back and look at your notes, your trig cheat sheet, whatever you do, before you proceed onto this problem, you pause and you recognize this and figure out what this is. Okay, so you should have paused and came back if you didn't get it. It's nothing more than tangent squared x, all right? And that's going to be over sine squared x. Well, when I don't know what to do with something, I'm going to convert everything to sine and cosine. And my writing tablet is really acting up right now. So I'm going to convert this to sine squared of x over cosine squared of x over sine squared of x. So we've got a compound fraction. You just flip and multiply. What that would visually look like, and I won't do this all the time, is it's going to be sine squared of x over cosine squared of x, because that's my tangent, times 1 over sine of x, because that was on the top. This is actually on the bottom. So we're going to flip and multiply. So it's going to be 1 over sine of x, sine squared of x. Well, guess what? That cancels, and I have 1 over cosine squared of x. Okay, I don't like my writing pad. And that's equal to secant squared of x. Okay, and that's what we're looking for. That is your final answer. Let's go to the next one. So I'm going, okay, what do I do? Well, when all in doubt, convert everything to sine and cosines. Well, that's just cosine over sine. And that's just 1 over cosine. Well, this looks kind of interesting. Guess what? These cancel out. It's just 1 over sine. And that's just a funny way of writing cosecant x. There you go. Not too bad on that one. Next one. Let's see if this one's a little more interesting. And it is. So there's actually a couple ways I can do this one. I can play with the parentheses a little bit and see what I can do there. But actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert everything to sine and cosine and distribute that sign. So I'll do it in steps. So I'm going to have sine of x times 1 over sine of x minus sine of x. Then I'm going to distribute. That's going to be sine over sine. You already see that hopefully as a 1, but I'm going to write it. Sine of x over sine of x minus sine squared of x. Well, that's 1 minus sine squared of x. And guess what? That's a Pythagorean identity. That is cosine squared of x. Yippee-yi. Okay. Next. And please be pausing it. Go back and redo these. So when I see something like this, yep, you already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to convert it to sine and cosine. Cotangent is just cosine over sine. So I'm going to write that. Cosine of x over sine of x. Nice big fraction line. And then cosecant is just a reciprocal of sine. So 1 over sine of x. Flip and multiply. I'll go ahead and write that out. So I'll have cosine of x over sine of x. And then I'm going to multiply it by sine of x over 1. And of course, these cancel out. So I just have cosine over 1, which is equal to cosine of x. All right, moving on. So 1 over sine squared x, and I'm thinking Pythagorean, and guess what? I'm thinking Pythagorean on the bottom too, and that's exactly what we have. I want you to pause, look up your Pythagoreans, either on your sheet or wherever, and determine which ones they are. And you already know, hopefully, cosine squared of x over cotangent squared of x. And once again, I'm going to, oh, good grief, turn everything into sine and cosine. Well, the top's taken care of. And that's going to be cosine over sine over sine squared of x. And I'm going to flip and multiply. And I might as well just go ahead and write it out. Electrons are cheap. So that's just going to be cosine squared of x, and this is just over 1, times sine squared of x on the top, Please be practicing these. And guess what? Those cancel out. And I'm going to end up with sine squared of x. All right, next one. And this will be our last one for this set, I believe. Pretty sure anyway. I have to look. Alrighty, guess what? You already know the answer. Convert everything to sine and cosine. So this is 1 over cosine. And in college, you're going to want to have your basic trig ones memorized. I don't have things like this memorized. I never would. And that's going to be sine of x over sine of x over cosine of x. Okay? So we're going to flip and multiply here. And yeah, I might as well just write it all out. And this is just sine of x over 1. And then I'm going to do cosine of x over sine of x. And looky what happens here. I'll do this in red because I love this stuff. You've probably seen this in your chemistry classes. We get to kill things. Cosine dies, sine dies, sine dies. And we just have 1 over 1, and it's equal to 1. Love it. Alrighty, is that the last one? Yes, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one saved and loaded.